Welcome to Dragonian, your podcast for news and updates in Hong Kong and Taiwan. I'm your host, William.
Hi everyone, welcome to the episode 17 of the Dragonian podcast. This is your host, William. This week's episode will be about how events and latest developments this week in Hong Kong and Taiwan have just gone as expected. From the education system's overhaul for cultivating more patriotism in Hong Kong, to a failed integration plans of the opposition. This week's political and social developments are just something that are as expected and as repetitive. Before starting, let's have a quick podcast update. There are now some under-the-hood changes that will enhance your listening experience, including an improved audio quality, with most, if not all, of the weird fuzzling and unclear sounds removed. This will also remove some technical arbitrary limits on podcast length. Furthermore, to facilitate the transition out from Google Podcasts, we have now arrived at YouTube. Search Dragonian and you can listen to our current and past episodes. If you would like to learn more about what's happening in these two regions, please subscribe to our podcast, whether you are listening from a favorite podcast app or directly through YouTube or YouTube Music. Let's start. So first, as always, we will have two parts, the Hong Kong part and the Taiwan part. So for the first part, in this part of the episode, we will be discussing confusing events that happened in Hong Kong that are so repetitive and as expected. The first news is about how Chinese officials are reaffirming their commitment on one country, two systems by meeting with foreign enterprises and local authorities. Xia Baolong, the director of Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office since 2020, have met with individuals from the commercial sector, including the chairman of Swire and Sons and the chairman of China Light and Power. He also met Commerce Chamber members, including the Hong Kong General Chamber of Commerce and various different foreign chambers that operate in Hong Kong, and, furthermore, government officials who visited Beijing. Xia, in his meeting with these different individuals and representatives, have reiterated a few points. This included that patriots would need to rule over Hong Kong, that the current business environment will not change, possibly to meet the 50 years no change promise where it was promised in 1984, while at the same time he also urged Hong Kong citizens to vote in the upcoming district council election to fulfill their civil obligations. This is very rare for Chinese officials to meet representatives from the commercial sector and officials independently in such a short period of time. Possibly, this may come as a result from concerns that the city that the political purge will extend to the commercial and other sectors as well. This is so expected. It's somewhat unexpected, but it's still very expected. It is unexpected that they have met so many people in so short period of time with so few scripts, as previously communist meetings are mostly heavily scripted. However, it is also expected, as this is just a repetition of lines by how Chinese officials consider Hong Kong or feels Hong Kong or thinks Hong Kong, how Hong Kong should be and is run. Install a patriotic mindset and an overhaul on how people in Hong Kong society thinks, while preserving as much commercial developments or the commercial environment as possible. Furthermore, it is also something that is very expected, as the lackluster economic situation and the political dead air have raised concerns if Hong Kong can continue to serve as an independent, technically not independent, but international financial hub with such a highly restrictive political atmosphere. China will actually need to reaffirm foreign investors and local commercial partners that not only everything will go normal, but also everything will improve. Situations will improve, as Hong Kong is actually experiencing a reconstruction of a social contract from a previously more liberal Western mindset to a more Russian mindset that is basically broken before the invasion of Ukraine, where China will actually let you earn money while just preventing politics to be anything volatile. This is about the first piece of news that happened, or the first topic that happened in Hong Kong. It's a group of news. It is also quite unexpected, as these meetings and various meetings have just gone just to some of them are very heavily scripted, but some of them are not. Next up, we'll have a discussion on China's plan to integrate identities of Hong Kong people as a Chinese citizen. The plans to integrate Hong Kong to the Greater Bay Area is the latest plan to assimilate the distinct identities of Hong Kong itself to identities with the household registration system in China. Although this can be considered as a very primary plan with no concrete details, this has actually caught the attention of citizens within the city, as it may actually be in direct contradiction to the city's mini constitution, where the city would be able to control its immigration and emigration affairs. Furthermore, this is actually in fact a part of the plan by Hong Kong and nearby authorities to integrate with each other and promote a Greater Bay Area identity. It is actually quite expected, as the government have various plans to push for a deeper integration within the Greater Bay Area. Furthermore, the idea or the distinct identity of Hong Kong citizens have started to the Hong Kong government has started losing control of how Hong Kong itself should be discussed, as more and more people are migrating out of Hong Kong. This comes as the latest idea to reshape the narrative where everything is normal. As expected, with the government promoting various patriotic education reforms and other things, this has surely been one of them to integrate the people of Hong Kong and people in the Guangdong province with each other. Next up, we will be discussing about Uber and the Hong Kong taxi industry. Uber is now again under very heavy scrutiny from Hong Kong's taxi industry for operating, quote, illegally, quote, in Hong Kong. Uber operates both a private car hiring or ride-hailing service, with another part as a taxi hailing service within the city, with the former one angering the taxi industry as a whole. This came as the value of tradable taxi licenses have plummeted in the past years due to taxis being considered as both a less and less profitable business, and at the same time with the economic downturn within the city. However, taxi industries or taxi workers have considered Uber as a culprit for the loss of demand for taxi services. Across Facebook groups and different unions or taxi unions, they have repeatedly accused Uber of basically taking a slice out from the cake of this fast car hailing industry. However, citizens in Hong Kong consider that is actually the lackluster of service the service levels that taxis provide have actually constituted the shift of preference from taxis to ride-hailing services. In fact, the taxi industry has been suffering from a lot of accusations and bad publicity due to some drivers actively ripping off tourists and citizens alike. For example, shorter rides that should cost approximately $50 to $70 will sometimes basically skyrocket to approximately $200 to $300 as a result of deliberate action and inaction by taxi drivers to basically wipe tourists and citizens off. Furthermore, different taxis have also been engaging in various so-called anti-citizen behavior or have bad publicity. For example, in 2019, a taxi driver had deliberately drove into a crowd of protesters, injuring various people, while at the same time himself being basically pushed out of the taxi and being beaten up. However, this standoff between Uber and the taxi industry is not the first time. It had actually sparked various controversies, basically by day one, or from day one, Uber operates in Hong Kong as a car or ride-hailing service. However, this time they have a very serious plan to do so, where, for example, they have originally planned to take part in strikes where they will stop providing services in off-peak hours, for weird reasons. However, the strike was called off at the last minute due to the designated protest or stage protest venue not renting or providing venues, and with citing a lack of no opposition notes, or in Chinese, 不反對通知書, by the Hong Kong police, with further pledges by police and the transport department to solve the issue of, quote, illegal ride-hailing in Hong Kong. However, both locals and pro-establishment government mouthpieces are not happy with this planned but cancelled strike. The mouthpiece of the Communist Party, Wen Weibo, actually wrote near an A2 page, basically to discuss how bad the taxi industry has become. For discussion in local forums, a few, if not none, of Hong Kong people pledged or provided condolences with what the taxi industry has now been facing. In fact, a lot are very happy that they stopped providing services, as basically the taxi industry itself are not or do not have any positive image for most Hong Kong citizens. In fact, not only have they ripped people off with very skyrocketing fares, but also their acts of not providing services as required by law if they are technically on hire, while at the same time, a significant number of taxi drivers will actually choose customers, or not following traffic rules, or attacking the mass transportation options. Where in locals, they are just basically mocking them as taxis won't go for short trips because they have waited for a long time, long rides because they are technically on shift, medium distance rides because that is not the direction they're going to, airports because I can't earn the return for riding in the return trip, and basically anywhere in the city. Furthermore, there are also other reasons where a car was put on hire but was unable to provide service because they are technically low on fuel, ending the shift, not the place I go, and other various interesting technical restrictions. These, quote, industry standard practices have actually in fact angered a lot of people as a result. In fact, this is just a latest episode of the drama of Uber versus taxis in Hong Kong. Possibly, there will be no solutions or no short-term and long-term solutions, as basically the image of taxis have actually been essentially destroyed after with this long period of under service or bad service levels. And furthermore, it is expected, or people would just choose to ride with Uber if taxis do not provide service or go on strike. As expected by the general public, locals actually are getting less and less tolerative of such anti-competitive behaviors by the taxi industry. With the reluctance of improvement over the years, for example, evading tax by just accepting cash and evading any e-payment options, and an at best mediocre service quality with basically no improvement for the past 30 years, a critical factor for them being abandoned or essentially abandoned by the general public to meet very specific traffic demands that mass transportation options cannot fulfill or to be too unprofitable to fulfill. Furthermore, this has also shown how fast individuals or fast players in the industry can harm the industry as a whole, as basically no new taxi licenses have been issued since the early 80s to curb the growth of taxis, while technically protecting the value of these taxi licenses, though they are interestingly transferable. Lastly, for news in Hong Kong, it is about the government's plan to implement a patriotic education framework for primary school children. The government in Hong Kong last week introduced papers to introduce a patriotic education framework for primary school children. This came after a review on general studies, a mandatory subject exclusively taught in primary school. The suggestions include a split of the subject to two different subjects, one called science and the other called humanities. The science subject is a normal science subject which includes a lot of science elements, possibly installing a bit of patriotism in it. However, it is the humanities or the renamed humanities subject that caught the attention of a lot of people. Previously, the general studies, it did not teach, or there are no frameworks on teaching patriotism. However, in the humanities, the new humanities subject, patriotism is basically the center and core of the subject. This revamped humanities subject will include a lot more patriotic elements, which include learnings from the quote 2019 Black-clad violence color revolution events, rationale behind the imposition of the Hong Kong National Security Law, the Basic Law of Hong Kong, and the Constitution of China. These are just part of the legal ones. However, it also includes accomplishments of the Chinese society and the Communist Party of China after 2000 or after 1979. Furthermore, it also included a lot of previously not mandated information to be taught as to instill patriotism, and various plans and safeguards to basically require schools to devote at least 7% of the time to teach just this humanities subject. It is actually very as expected, as liberal studies have been all but demolished in Hong Kong after 2021. It can be considered as just another move to more patriotism and a bridge of the Hong Kong's local education system with the Chinese one. In fact, this can be considered as a part of a large-scale overhaul to attract more people in China to move and reside in Hong Kong by removing one more obstacle, the education. And furthermore, this is also used to make up for the whooping emigration figures, more than 200,000, or in Hong Kong's case, it's more than 500,000 net, it's not net, but 500,000 people leave Hong Kong after the national security law was imposed to the city in 2020. These are the main top most important events that happened in Hong Kong last week. Next, we'll have events that happened in Taiwan. Next up, this part will be about Taiwan itself. In this part of the episode, we will be discussing very confusing political developments in the island, while also highlighting efforts after years of lack of protection of renters. First, we will be discussing about the elections for the Legislative Yuan 立法院 next year. 国昌 Wang Guochang Casey Huang has topped Taiwan People's Party's party list for the Legislative Yuan. He is known for his participation in the Sunflower Movement in 2014. After that, he co-founded the New Power Party in 2015 and entered the Legislative Yuan, representing the party he founded in 2016 as a party list member. He became much more famous after 2016 for his questionings of the government when he represented the party he founded between 2016 and 2020. He did not make it to the party list, or he made it to the party list but was not placed in a safe seat in 2020. Subsequently, he lost his seat. In this year, he quit the party that he founded last week. He quit the party he founded and joined the TPP afterwards. In fact, this happened just 2 weeks prior to the recording of this episode. After that, as he joined the Taiwan People's Party, he actually topped the party list for the Taiwan People's Party. And basically after he joined the parties, and then he get appointed to lead the party list as the first member, or as the top male member, leading the Taiwan People's Party's party list for the Legislative Yuan. This has actually raised questions for skipping the rules, as the party itself had announced and at the same time signed off official documents that required any wishful members of the public to join the party before the 31st of August for themselves to self-recommend themselves to get into the party list. At the same time, there are also some further discussions, as we are having various party discussions of the 3%, 5%, and 1%, etc. discussions. There are now more discussions about the fairness of the system, whether it can protect the interest of smaller parties. Furthermore, the Legislative Yuan elections have also been heavily affected by the breakdown of the integration of the opposition for the presidential bid. After the presidential bid, or co-ticketing, the idea of co-ticketing of the presidential bid fell apart and broke down, it apparently have affected discussions and plans for both candidates running for the Legislative Yuan and for the presidency. This came as a much harder hit, actually, for the whites and blues. Before the discussions broke down, the blues and whites, which means that the Chinese Kuomintang and the Taiwan People's Party, have reached a general consensus in principle, where the Kuomintang will not nominate candidates if a candidate representing the Taiwan People's Party runs for one seat or for that particular seat, while at the same time it happens vice versa. While these are done, or these arrangements are done, for the ultimate goal to remove the Democratic Progressive Party from governing Taiwan. After the discussions of the presidential bid, or of the preparations for having a co-ticketing or two candidates appearing in the same ticket fell apart, this has actually affected some plans for both the Taiwan People's Party and the Chinese Kuomintang, especially for those related to the so-called demonstration areas for the Blue-White cooperation, where the Chinese Kuomintang were not only not pushing out or having candidates running for that constituency, but at the same time actively campaigning for the Taiwan People's Party's candidate. This is just so expected, as the development of Taiwan's politics have basically mandated that it will be similar to how the United States will have been, where there will be two big umbrella parties, with smaller parties having fewer choices or having fewer resources to yield any significance or to change the discussions, or to change the narrative of discussions within the island itself. It is also an expected event for both the currently ruling Democratic Progressive Party, who they have, well, we now can say correctly predicted that they will not be able to yield a joint ticket, while at the same time for both the Chinese Kuomintang and in some degree the Taiwan People's Party, with the Chinese Kuomintang having basically a plan or an image of them basically not or being the good guys, while at the same time basically ruining the cooperation. Next up, we will be having an update on the 2024 presidential elections. This is about the opposition first. So, a very, not quick, but detailed update on the integration of the opposition. This is actually a very interesting week, as the plan for yielding a joint ticket for the opposition has basically fell apart. This happened in Wednesday night, as Terry Gou, Guo Taiming, Hou Youyi, and Ko Wen-je met in the Hyatt Hotel in Taipei in the night, while basically broke up immediately. As a result, both Hou and Ko have announced that they will run for the role independently. While sadly speaking, Terry Gou, the only candidate that able to pass the threshold for a nomination by the mass or the public nomination, had quit the race. This came as Gou's company, Foxconn, was fined $3,000 for alleged tax fraud for a company-owned factory complex in China. A very unusually small amount when compared to what normal companies of this size are charged for the type of alleged breach of rules. This was seen as an indicator that Gou will eventually drop out from the race. Furthermore, Hou and Ko has selected their running mates within 24 hours after the negotiations break down, and at the same time before the deadline for parties nominating candidates to run for the presidency. Hou selected Zhao Shaokang, a media personality who had a much pro-unification stance, or in the sense of promoting the use of Republic of China as the official name for the current entity. However, this vice president choice, or the nomination for the vice president, actually contradicts with the image that the KMT would want to project, a youthful and next generation image. However, that meets a part of the party which they call themselves KMT fighters, where they consider themselves actively fighting for the survival of the Republic of China. It had also created an unintended side effect of forcing the Shaokong War Room, 少康战情室, at TVBS to be renamed as the TVBS War Room to meet local election laws. At the same time,柯文哲selected Cynthia Wu, a so-called third generation of the founding family of the Xinjiang Group, which is a conglomerate that operates in Taiwan. Similarly, this is actually not what the TPP would originally want to project, or what the image of the TPP would originally want to project as, where the political parties would not be influenced by large consortiums, or basically nominating a very high-profile person within the Xinjiang Group basically contradicts to this whole idea that no consortiums, or that they will put people first. For the Pan-Greens, as discussed last week, they have made Xiao as the vice president's running mate. Xiao herself has actually quit or basically handed her resignation as the Taiwanese representative to the United States on Monday, or last Monday, where basically the discussion of Xiao as William Lai's running mate have basically been a public secret since the week before. After that, a lot of posters have been basically been in place for William and Xiao's taking photos together. However, the photo that was most widespread was a photo that was taken in the United States of America. Interesting. So there are actually some election topics. So first about the cross-strait situation, or the Taiwan Strait issue. There have now been three different rhetorics for this currently considered as a three-way race. The incumbent vice president, or the president's hopeful, William Lai from the ruling party, would want to frame this race as the so-called current status quo versus China's influence or reunification of Taiwan into China. While the Kuomintang actually framed this race as a race for war in the Taiwan Strait versus peace in the Taiwan Strait, and corruption in the government versus honesty in the government, where they accuse the ruling Democratic Progressive Party of engaging in unfair practices and basically engaging in heavy corruption. Lastly, the TPP, Taiwan People's Party, framed this as a war against corruption and the political chaos, or this 24 years of political chaos brought up by the pan-green versus pan-blue polarization of the society. This has also cemented the list of candidates running for the 2024 presidential election. This includes William Lai and Bi-khim Xiao for the DPP, Hou You-yi and Zhou Shoukong for the Chinese Kuomintang, Ko Wen-je and Wu Xinyin for the Taiwan People's Party. This is basically the final episode of the blue-white cooperation saga, as we are seeing this cooperation or this possible collaboration basically was torn apart. And interestingly, the core reason for this whole episode, or for the whole discussion of the Tour report, is about statistics. And, jokingly speaking, everyone in Taiwan got a free presidential study partner for statistics. It is also expected, as basically freeway races have basically been in place since 2008. Basically was in place since 2000. However, in 2004, it only yielded one candidate. TPP would also be actively avoiding to get into the steps of the 亲民党, where basically he was basically it became a bubble after the 2004 elections. The third topic about Taiwan is about a very significant steps toward rights for affordable and safe housing. The Legislative Yuan passed amendments to the Housing Act last week. The act itself removed restrictions for tenants to apply for housing subsidy, while at the same time removed and relaxed scrutiny for landlords that participate in the scheme. These are considered as the main obstacles for people applying for the housing subsidy, where landlords could unintentionally face additional scrutiny for participating in the scheme, which pushed a lot of landlords, or made a lot of landlords, reluctant to participate. This can also be considered as a large push for more affordable and safe housing conditions for people within the island, and at the same time helping renters accessing cheaper housing as well. At the same time, it had also amended portion or part of availability of social housing. The idea of social housing was actually started after 2016, after the current President Tsai became president, as an initiative. It first came out for the Taipei city, and afterwards are now spreading across the whole island. For all the updates, it had now becoming a major part of the election, or a significant part of election, where the rights for to access safe and affordable housing has been considered as the core of some of the candidates' main point of the main campaign spotlight. So for the amendments for social housing, it actually relaxed some of the limits. First, it relaxed limits for the number of kids that they will need to bear before they are available for social housing. The relaxation removed, or basically it reduced the amount of children under 18 they need to have before being eligible for social housing. It reduced from 3 children under 18 to only 2 children under 18. And at the same time, if you are already in social housing and your children turned over 18, you can still be able to access social housing. It also mandated that all flats or social housing developments developed by cities, counties, and municipal governments would need to have at least 40% of the capacity devoted to people who are considered to be socially disadvantaged. There are a few reasons for these amendments to be expected. The first reason is about the housing itself. Housing prices have been rising since early 2000s and been considered as unbearable for the majority of citizens residing in the country or in the island. This is another part of a major effort to make housing more affordable to the general public, to reduce the living costs for the public, while at the same time effectively reducing inflation at the same time. It also removed one of the conditions that placed under heavy scrutiny in Taiwan, where the housing subsidy was hard for current tenants to apply for because of the unwillingness of landlords to face extra scrutiny. The amendment thus bring new initiatives for homeowners and landlords to offer more affordable rents to tenants before social housing becomes the norm within the island. At the same time, it also seems to be part of the final drive for bills to be passed in the current session or term before election comes. This is about the third news, and this is all about the updates for affordable and safe housing situation in Taiwan. We hope you find this episode informative. If you do, please subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss any single episode. If you have any feedback, please let us know in the comments or drop us an email at william@dragonianpod.com. Thanks again for listening. We will be back next week with more news from Hong Kong and Taiwan. If you would like to be updated on what's happening in these two regions that are of locals' interest, subscribe now. Have a safe, prosperous, and happy week ahead. Goodbye.